If you like joy and peace and prosperity and transformation, then this is the episode for you. In this episode of the Nurse Soul podcast, I interview the retired Reverend Carol O'Connell. Carol was one of the most popular and successful Unity ministers for 30 years, and she is now offering spiritual counseling. She is known for helping people transform their lives. And in this episode, we talk about all kinds of things soul related. What is the soul? Where is the soul? And how do we best align with our soul and our soul's purpose? So I hope that you enjoy listening as much as I enjoyed talking with Carol. Welcome to the show, Reverend Carol O'Connell. I'm so excited.
I'm delighted to be here. It's fun to have these kind of open-ended conversations where it can go anywhere and we don't know, and we'll just play with it.
Yes. Yeah, I've been waiting for this one, so I'm really excited. And one of my favorite things about you is your gift for speaking. I absolutely love to watch you on stage speaking. So sometimes when you would be doing a sermon, but other times when you would just be doing a talk, I absolutely love your talks. So I love when you talk about how we can get tuned. What is it? Tuned in, tapped in, turned on.
Turned on.
Yeah, I love that. So I thought maybe we would start with, what is the soul and where is the soul and how do we tap in?
Oh, what a great place to start.
Okay.
Well, I like to talk about the triune nature of human. So we're body, mind, and soul.
Right.
That's the triune nature. So body, which is your expertise, is critically important. What we put into our body, what we ingest, and how we move our body is such an important piece of good life and a good lifestyle. And then the mind, which is amazingly powerful, and we'll talk more about that. And what we put into our mind and what we choose to think about in our mind is critically important. But then the soul, that's the piece that really brings it all together. So the soul is that spark of the divine that flows through us.
Right.
Completely flows through us. It's in every cell, it's in every organ, every blood vessel. But it also flows into Mother Earth, and it grounds us as long as we are here on the planet and having this human experience. It grounds us into Mother Earth, which is a living entity. And so that's an energy that moves down into the earth and it moves up and through us. And then it connects us to the field of all creation. So let's talk about that for a moment.
Okay.
Because the field of all creation is, in religion, it's called God.
Right.
In spiritual circles, it's called source,
right,
or divine mind.
Life force
In
energy.
Science,
yeah.
It's called the unified field. But it's all the same ball of energy.
Right.
And we have come forth from that energy, which is the most exciting thing in the whole world. Because when we come into the physical experience, we tend to forget who we really are. And we're taught a lot of different things, and we're programmed in our subconscious mind many things throughout our life experience. And then we wonder sometimes, where's the joy? Right. If life is not meant to be a struggle, if it's meant to be a joy, then where's the joy? Right. And the joy is our connection. It's our soul. That soul is that spark of joy that connects us to source energy from which we have come forth. So the greatest understanding of all that changes our life forever is to recognize that we have come forth from God. We have come forth from that stream of energy. So we are a piece of that energy.
Right.
It's come forth from whatever you want to call the unified field, the field of all creation, God, source, whatever you want to call it. We have come forth from that, and it has incarnated into a physical experience. Right. So we're not a human being having a physical experience. We are a spiritual being having a human experience.
Right.
And that's the distinction that makes all the difference in our lives. Because when we truly understand that we're spiritual beings,
right,
we're in a human body and we're on planet Earth, and we've chosen to be here during this very spectacular time on the ascension of the planet. And we can get into that if you want, but we've chosen to be here.
Yeah.
And to recognize our powerful, creative, spiritual nature, and that our essence is absolute creation. And our essence comes from the highest energy on the planet, which is love.
Right. Right.
So in A Course in Miracles, they talk about the two energies that control this or govern this universe, and it's love and fear.
Fear and
love.
And
all the many aspects of love and fear.
Right.
And I love to talk about how we can define and we can discern where we're living. Are we living in fear in all of its aspects? Are we living in love in all of its aspects? So you've got fear, which is judgment, blame, shame, guilt, anger, unforgiveness. Then you have love, which is kindness, compassion, gratitude, appreciation, joy, peace. And so I say to clients, check in every couple of hours and see where you're at. Are you living below the line or are you living above the line?
Right.
And it's an amazing exercise because people say, well, I'm very positive. I lead a very positive life. And then they start checking in and realize how often
they're below.
They're in judgment. They're angry about something. They're in fear about something. And so to move into a different place of understanding who we really are, then we get to, you've heard the axiom, we create our own reality.
Right.
Well, it's very, very true. We create our own reality every moment of every day.
Right.
Depending on where we're choosing to think and feel.
Right.
So we could talk about the creative process and how it works. That might be interesting to some of your readers.
Absolutely. I think the power of choice, because when you're talking about, and you check in every couple of hours, are you below or above? There's a choice there. And I think sometimes people don't feel like they have a choice, but there is always a choice right there in that moment.
There's always a choice, always. But we're making those choices. We're making those choices every moment of every day. Right. What many people they're just not aware of is that their choices are creating their reality.
Right, of course.
But how that process works is confusing for some. Yeah. So it's good to understand the steps of the creative process. They're very simple and they're simple to understand, not quite as easy to integrate into your life and live them.
Yeah.
But you start by understanding how creation happens. And it starts with a thought. Anything that we think over and over and over, people will say, I can't stop thinking about that. Yeah. Well, they can stop thinking about it, but it has taken control. And so what a lot of people think is they don't control their mind and that their mind controls them. But the truth of the matter is we control our minds. We choose what our thoughts are. Nothing is controlling our mind. There's nothing in the world that controls our mind except us. Right. So we're a choice. Right. So we have this thought that we think over and over and over and over and over again. And it's energy. Everything in the universe is energy. So
energy.
we're clear about that.
Right.
So every thought is energy.
Mm-hmm.
It has an energy. And it creates a vibration, an emotion.
Right.
So a thought that we think over, if we created every single thought we had, we'd all be in trouble. Okay, so we don't want to go there. Right. But it's the thoughts that we think over and over and over again. They have power and they create an emotion, a feeling.
Right.
And that's where the creation really happens, is in our feelings and our emotions.
Mm-hmm.
So our emotions have energy. They have a vibration. And that vibration radiates out into this unified field, into this field of creation. And it activates what many call the law of attraction, which is just simply law.
Right.
It's like the law of gravity.
Right.
What goes up comes down.
Right.
The law of attraction, what goes out comes back. Every philosophy in the world will teach that. So we're putting that dominant emotional vibration out into the creative field, and it can only bring back to us opportunities, experiences, and people that are in alignment
with that vibration,
with that emotional vibration. And that's how we create our own reality. So it's simple, right?
Right.
Intellectually, we get it.
Right.
Simple.
Yeah.
Now you start living that, and you look around your life, and you say, where am I creating what I want? And where am I creating what I don't want? So it's about taking responsibility. What happens, it's not about blame, shame, or guilt.
Right.
So if we take responsibility and say, well, look what I've created. Oh my gosh, this is terrible. And then we go down the guilt rabbit hole. Okay. So now we're below the line. Okay. So if we say awareness is the key. So we say, I take responsibility for what I've created in this aspect of my life, be it wellness or abundance or relationships or whatever it might be. All we have to do is look around our life and we can see where we're creating above the line and where we're creating below the line.
Right.
And we say, well, I don't like the way let's use money. Money's always a great subject. I don't like the way money doesn't flow in my life. Right. You know, I never have enough. I'm always worried about money. I have this fear of money. And you realize that somewhere in probably your childhood, you learned about fear of money. You learned about lack. And then you carried that through into your adulthood, and you keep creating more and more lack because that's a belief that's programmed in your subconscious mind. And so you say, well, then how do I change that? Well, you change that by realizing that you want to transform that belief and to understand, if we have come forth from the highest intelligence in the universe, if we have come forth from that, could it be possible that we came forth to live in lack? No, we came forth, our birthright is abundance. Our birthright is abundance of all good, and that includes money. And money is just energy.
Right.
Money is energy that we use for exchange.
Right.
And we're either allowing that energy to flow in our life, or we're pushing it away with our stinking thinking. So
yeah, that's right.
And that's really what it comes down to.
Yeah.
We're pushing it away with our stinking thinking.
Right.
So we begin to create it differently. And we start with the mind. And we start engaging in a different mindset. So we're looking at a mindset now of abundance. And we're claiming that for ourselves. We're setting that intention to know that we are abundance, that we live in abundance, and we accept it, abundance, and we allow abundance into our life. So we're not just talking money, but money comes in there.
Right.
And we see money flowing into our life. And we begin to realize that if money is energy, and we don't have enough of that energy flowing, then we have the potential to open up to more of that flowing. And it's amazing how that works.
It is amazing.
What's amazing about it is that,
Mm-hmm.
how you can create a time warp.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to be late for something and you just think, no, it's fine. And you create that time. You can create a money warp too. And you just believe that there's more than enough to handle everything that you need to handle it. There's always more than enough to handle your financial responsibilities and more. There's more than enough to do everything you want to do. There's more than enough. There's always more than enough. And you start that new dance. And it's a new dance between you and money. We live in a world of relativity. So
Right.
we're in relationship with everything, including money.
Right.
So our relationship with money has been one of there's never enough. So now we're changing the dance and we're saying there's more than enough. Well, what does that feel like? What does it feel like if you had more than enough? Well, then you use your mind to visualize it.
Right.
What would I do if I had more money? Well, maybe I'd go on a cruise. Maybe I would take more vacations. Maybe I'd buy a new house. Maybe I would be so comfortable in my life because I could pay off my financial obligations and I would live in peace and joy. Whatever works for each person is what works.
Right.
So
Right.
we allow it to come in. That works on every level, whether we're talking about our wellness, or we're talking about our relationships, or we're talking about our joy, or our work, our career. It works on every level. And every level can be up-leveled to where we want it to be, because that's how powerful we are. We're connected to the energy that creates worlds.
Right.
And I love what Marianne Williamson says. She says, we can either allow the energy that creates worlds to drive our life and guide our life, or we can do it ourselves.
Right.
And then you say, well, how's that working out for you?
Right.
When we do it ourselves, how's that working out for you?
Yeah.
So we're connected to something that's so much bigger than we are. But the significant critical understanding there is that it's not something outside of us. In our culture,
right,
we have been taught, and millions of people still believe, and that's fine,
God's out there.
God's out there. Okay, so if we want something, we're going to ask something out there. Right. And even in spiritual circles, we're still looking at something out there. And I'm saying it's not out there, it's right here.
Right.
It's always been here.
Right.
It's always been here. You are the expression of God in a human form.
Right.
That's who you are. So you tap in to that energy.
Right.
And it guides you.
That is there. That there's no tapping it. Because I used to think of it as kind of tapping in, like you have a plug and I got to go tap it in outside, right? As opposed to this, it's already in you. You're tapping into something deep inside of you, the essence of you. I still think, sometimes people will say, well, that sounds great, but I don't think I can do that. You already are. The essence of you is already connected. So it's this idea of finding your way back to what you already are, which is energy and light and a piece of this life force energy or whatever you want to call it. I wanted to ask you, because I've been sort of thinking about the uniqueness of the soul. So if we're all connected to this force that creates worlds, like we're all a piece of that, it's interesting to me that the pieces are so unique. And I don't know if you have some thoughts about why would we be so unique if we're all coming from the same source?
True. Good question. Great question. And why we are so unique in our humanity is that we incarnate into a physical body, and we choose that. And we choose our parents, and we choose a lot of the people but we always have free will. So even though we've chosen and we've made contracts with a lot of different souls that we're going to have experiences with, but every one of us is always at choice. But as we move into this physical experience, we move into a family, and there's a family system, and there's a family culture, and possibly a family religion.
Right.
And so now at a very young age, because we're a blank slate when we move in, we don't remember. Well, most of us don't remember.
Right. We go through a process of forgetting, for sure.
Yeah, we're in the process of forgetting. And so we're taught. And for the first 7 years of our lives, we have no ability to discern or rationalize anything. So whatever we see, whatever we feel, whatever we hear is programmed into our subconscious mind. And our subconscious mind controls 95% of our life experience. So we have a culture in our family.
Right.
We have a culture in our schooling and our education. We're taught many, many things, and we see many things in the world.
Right.
And that creates our personality.
Right.
Now so our soul takes on a personality, and that's our uniqueness, because every personality is different.
Unique. Right.
And it's based on what we've been taught, nature and nurture. It's everything that we've experienced becomes our personality. Now we have the opportunity to shift many of the things that we've learned that no longer serve us. And we have the opportunity to step into and shift our personality as we mature.
Sure.
Because we're maturing physically, but we're maturing spiritually and psychologically, mentally, emotionally also. But the personality stays with us. And while we're in a physical body, we have a personality. Now, what's really fascinating is that when the physical body dies, so when the physical body drops away, okay, now our soul is pure energy, and energy can never be destroyed. It just changes form.
Correct.
So the soul that has always been the energy flow within us never dies.
Right.
So that soul, that piece of that energy moves back into the non-physical.
Right.
And drops the personality.
Right.
We don't take that personality. That's just our humanness.
Right.
But we drop our human form and we drop our personality, which means we drop all of our fears.
Right.
All of our upsets, all of our angers, all of our human traits. We drop them. But the energy that is you, when you drop your physical form, that consciousness that is you and your soul will continue to be you.
Right.
So that's why our loved ones, our pets, our loved ones are all around us. They're all around us because they don't go anywhere. When we talk about the field, it's not like the field is up there in the sky somewhere.
Right.
We can open our hand like that. That's the field. Okay. Right. Here it is. Right. We live and move and breathe and have our being in
the field
of creation.
Yeah.
So that means we live and move and breathe and have our being in God.
Right. Yeah.
In source.
Right. Yeah. Because and that's another thing that I used to think that, there was like a soul that dropped into the body, and now I start to see it more as a body that's dropped into a soul.
Yes.
A little broader, bigger. But I guess I'm still curious about, do you think that our souls are unique? Like, I get that our personalities are unique and that we take on all of these things, but once we return to that essence of energy that goes back into the field or back to source, is there uniqueness about our essence there, or are we all kind of the same there? Is energy?
Great question. So in my understanding, and we're evolving every day.
I know.
But in my understanding, once we move back into the non-physical, we are pure light.
That's my understanding.
We are pure light, and there's only one. Right. There's only one stream of energy.
Right.
In this universe, there are many universes, many other forms of life, but in this universe, there's one stream of energy. And we're all part of that stream of energy.
Right.
So in our humanity, we become personality and unique personalities. In our divinity, we are all one.
Right.
We're just all one.
Right. That makes sense to me.
And there's no time or space in the non-physical world.
Right.
So time doesn't exist, space doesn't exist.
Yeah.
So our loved one that has transitioned back to the light and moved back into the non-physical world because that loved one dropped their physical body, they are pure light and they're aware of everything.
Right.
So their awareness is there.
Right.
So that's why they can still be aware of those that they have had physical experiences with. And I do believe that our souls intermingle with each other in many lifetimes. We go through many life experiences, bumping up against the same souls, and we play different parts in each life. It makes life such a game.
Right.
It really is a game, the game of life. It is such a game. And when we learn how to play the game and we recognize what the game is and what the game means, then we suddenly realize that we're the master of the game. We are powerful spiritual beings, and we're magnificent in our ability to create. We truly, each one of us, are magnificent.
Yes.
One of the keys that I've learned that has helped people to begin to connect with that portion of them that is pure light and love is to begin to ask. And I've had clients say to me, well, I really don't ask because that sounds like I'm praying. And it sounds like I'm praying to something outside of me. And I said, no, it's not that at all. You're asking your higher self. There's that part of you, part of your soul, the dominant part of your soul is still in the non-physical realm because we are multidimensional beings. We don't just live on one dimension.
Right.
We live on many dimensions.
Right.
And so that part of your soul that is still in non-physical world is your higher self. Let's call it your higher self. It's not separate from you because there's never any separation, but it's part of you. But that part of you lives in the non-physical world. So when you ask for what you want, you know, you're asking. I love it. I love to set intentions. And right before we go to sleep at night, you know, the subconscious mind works on the last thing that we put into it all night long. Subconscious mind is always at work.
Yes.
And it controls 95% of our life experience. So what are we planting into the subconscious mind right before we go to sleep? So I love to do this little exercise where step number one is you set your intention for what you want to feel the next day, or what you want to experience, or something that's really on your heart. You set an intention in an affirmative form. You know, I set my intention to feel the greatest joy tomorrow as I have lunch with so-and-so, okay? It can be as specific as that.
Okay.
And then the second step is to visualize what that would feel like. And you can put that in your mind and you can think about it and you can look at it and you can say, you can see yourselves laughing and hugging, and maybe this is a person you've been estranged from and you want a harmony to come into that relationship, and this is how you begin. So you set the intention, that's your asking. That's your asking. I'm setting an intention. This is what I want.
Right.
And then I'm visualizing as if it were already done.
Right.
And then the third step, as always, is gratitude. The energy of gratitude opens the portal to all good. And gratitude is such an amazing and powerful energy. I think of energy as love being the highest
Mm-hmm.
force in the universe. And love is our essence. That's what we brought forth into us. Love is our essence, and it flows through every cell in our body.
Mm-hmm.
To me, the next most powerful energy is gratitude.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And we have lots of science to back up the power of gratitude to shift somebody's brain chemistry, their whole perspective. So yeah, it's something that's, and I think, when I'm working with people on wellness and to see themselves well, sometimes people really struggle there. It's been a long time since they've felt well. And so to set the intention, we always start with intention. What is your overarching big intention? And it can be real specific sometimes, or just, their broader intention, and then to see it so that, and I talk about it as in the path rises to meet you. So it gives you the courage. If you can see it, you can build the bridge. If you can see it, you can take a step towards whatever wellness might look like for them, and to get real clear about it. And then the gratitude piece, to be grateful for what is working in your life, for the fact that you have a minute to even be thinking about your intention, or it can be struggle for some people to get there, to feel grateful and appreciative.
Do you find that when you're working with clients and you invite them to have a broader perspective of their, whatever their issue is, that it is so exciting for them?
Oh yeah.
And so amazing.
Yeah.
Because they've never thought of that.
Right.
They've never thought that they could step out of their problem. And so they've been so focused on the problem for maybe years.
Yes.
And then when you invite them to a different perception, life is about perception, a different perspective and a different perception of themselves as whole and well.
Right.
Don't you find that they get so excited they can hardly stand it?
Yeah, there's a huge shift for people.
Huge shift.
Yeah.
And then the work, and then they have to do the work.
Right.
Okay.
And then, and I might call that, I like responsibility because of response ability, the ability to respond as life is coming at you. So I like that taking full responsibility for everything in your life. But I will often talk about commitment. Like once they've made the commitment, like for our wholeness, wellness, wealth, abundance, whatever it is, once they've made that commitment, it's a part of their intention. There's a shift that happens, even if they can't even see it yet, where there is no way, a way will be made if they can stay with it. And the gratitude is a big piece of that as well.
But once we set an intention and we make a commitment, I know when I was very new in this whole study, I didn't believe everything.
Right.
It was like people said, well, there are no accidents, and we create everything. And it's like, well, I didn't believe that. I'd lived for decades and I'd never heard that. So I had to prove it to myself. And I would do the work because I was committed to discover whether this worked or not, to whether I really could create my own reality and how that really was going to show up. So I would do the exercises and I would do the work, and I was committed to do the work, but I was very skeptical.
Right.
And I would imagine even some of your clients, if they're committed to do the work and you take one day at a time.
Yeah.
And one baby step.
One breath at a time, sometimes. Yeah. One breath.
One breath at a time, one baby step at a time. Yeah. And over a period of time, manifestations began to happen because I had done the work. And it was like, wow, this stuff really works. And even today, 50 years later, even today, there are times that manifestations happen from some intentions I've set, or they just happen because I always am in the vibration of drawing to me my highest good, not having any idea what it is. And it will happen. And I still giggle. Yeah. I still giggle. My mantra, my favorite mantra for years has been, my life is unfolding in its right and perfect way. Right. And the caveat to that is I don't have a clue what that means.
Right.
That's the joy of this journey.
Yeah.
Is I'm trusting
Mm-hmm.
that when I set an intention that my life is unfolding its right and perfect way, right and perfect means I'm surrendering. I of my little self,
right,
my human self, if I try to figure it out or how it's going to happen, then that usually slows the process, often gets me in trouble.
Right.
But if I let it go and I release it,
Mm-hmm.
and I know that I am being guided
Mm-hmm.
every step along the way, and my ask, for the most part,
Mm-hmm.
is always asking for guidance.
Me too. Yeah. And I really learned that from you, this idea of for the best and highest. And I even in my prayers had shifted when I learned that from you, because I would be more specific maybe in my prayer, and then, to shift my prayer to the highest and best for all. Sometimes
for all concerned. Yes.
Right. The highest and best, not just for me, but for all concerned. And then to really surrender. Now that's tricky to just, some people say, I don't know how to let this go. Like I've prayed it, but then to really surrender to that higher part of ourselves and not go right back. I watch people. I mean, you can see it happen in front of you. They'll feel it. They'll start to see, and there's some opening, and they're moving to that. And then they go whoop right back to like that loop of the stinking thinking of trying to solve it and trying to put it, and right back to the small self. And it's, that surrender is tricky for some at some times. I guess tricky for most people, I think.
I think it's tricky for most people for a while, and sometimes a long while. Mm-hmm. And it depends on what their commitment to do the work is, how intense they really work at it, or they work at it once in a while, or they shift their energy once in a while. Mm-hmm. But whatever we focus on expands. Correct. So when somebody says, well, I'm focused on this problem, and I need to figure it out, or I'm focused on this situation in this relationship, and I need for them to change. I need for them to show up differently so that I feel better about me. Yeah. And that's the key. Yeah. I need them to show up differently so I feel better about me. And then when you start changing that, you realize I want the highest and the best for all concerned. Yeah. And I don't know what that is for another person, because we're all on our own unique journey. Mm-hmm. And we don't have the right to interfere with somebody else's journey. Right. Even when it comes to wellness, you have a loved one that's ill. Yeah. And now you're going to do whatever you can do on a physical level to help them and support them. Mm-hmm. But there comes a point in time, if they're really ill, is that the ask is truly a form of surrender. Is that I don't know what the right and perfect healing is. Mm-hmm. But my ask and my prayer, however you want to say it, is that I am asking for the right and perfect healing for this person that I love. And sometimes the right and perfect healing is for them to drop the physical body and move back into the light. Right. And that is the right and perfect healing. Right. And when we realize that, it's like, well, yeah, but I don't want them to go. I want them here. And, I don't want, and that's normal. That's very normal. We don't want to lose our loved ones where they're not in our physical space anymore, but it's not a tragedy that they've moved on. Right. That was their soul. When our soul is complete, it moves on and it finds a way to exit the body. It might be COVID. It might be, and there's purpose in everything. There's purpose in everything. And if it's a long-term illness, there's purpose in that too, for that soul and for any soul that's involved with them. So when we step back and we look at life from a different perception, and we don't see it as a series of struggles and upsets, and we don't get involved in what's going on in the rest of the world, and we just say, so where am I in my consciousness? Where am I in my dominant emotional vibration? Where am I in my beliefs? Belief is nothing more than a thought that we think over and over and over and over again. Mm-hmm. And it takes on a life of its own. Mm-hmm. And it's a belief. And that belief is now programmed into our subconscious mind. Mm-hmm. And that those beliefs drive our life. Mm-hmm. So we say, well, I guess maybe it's time to create a new belief, a different belief, so I can transform that old one and release it. I don't feel like we need years and years and years of therapy of hashing out our old beliefs that no longer work. That's an old paradigm, and it worked for many, many decades. But the new paradigm that science has brought forth really is about being able to tap into the energy of our thoughts and recognize what's working and what's not working and shift it instantly. Mm-hmm. Right. Instantly. I tell people, if you're in a negative thought, and we all go there, okay? Yeah. And so it's like, don't beat yourself up. Don't go into guilt because it'll take you down the rabbit hole. But if you're in a negative thought, whether you've had that thought for an hour or a day or a week or a month or whatever, it doesn't matter.
Or decades.
As soon as you wake up, as soon as you wake up and realize, oh, look where my focus is. Right. My focus has been on that problem forever now. And you want to pivot out of it.
Right.
You don't say to yourself, okay, I'm not going to look at that anymore. That's like the elephant in the room, right? I'm not going to think about that anymore. That really doesn't work most of the time.
Right.
But how we can pivot out of it instantly is to make a choice, to think about something that brings you joy. For me, it's the sun shining on the water and all the little diamonds. There you go.
Yeah.
There you go. Right. I have it in my background also. Mm-hmm. And, or it's, thinking about my pet or something that really lifts me up energetically. Right. Because all we're doing now is lifting out of that low vibration.
Yeah.
We're vibratory beings. We live in a vibratory universe. Mm-hmm. So we're lifting out of that vibration that we've been focused on a lot. And we can lift ourselves up instantly if we focus on something that brings us joy. Right. And we all have something in our life that we can bring up, a pet, a child that does something really sweet, a water, a mountain, whatever it is. And suddenly we're out of that. Doesn't mean we're not going to go back to it.
Right.
So now we have to stay awake and say, do I want to live and create from that vibration?
Right.
Or do I want to live from a higher vibration above the line? Mm-hmm. And that's a choice. And we're making it all the time. That's the fun of life. It's not like everything is perfect. I say we're perfect in our imperfections.
Yeah.
And we really don't know what's going to happen next. And life happens. Mm-hmm. Life happens to us. But when we're in the zone, when we're in the flow, when we're tapped into that divine peace within us, and life is flowing, we'll walk down the right street, and we won't walk down the street where an accident happens. That's how it works. We'll be in the right and perfect place to meet the right and perfect person that enhances our life,
right?
Instead of being in a different place where there's nothing there for us. That's the distinction between being in the flow of life and feeling disconnected.
Right.
We're never actually disconnected, but we can choose to disconnect ourselves mentally and emotionally. And then life happens for us in a different way.
Right.
But life never happens to us. Life never happens to us. Life happens through us.
Right.
So whatever happens in our life is not an accident. It has purpose.
Yeah.
Even the difficult things in life have purpose.
Right.
But life is happening through us.
Right.
And we're a choice always.
Yeah.
To create our reality the way we want it to be, the way that feels right. The way it's always about how does it feel? How does it feel?
Right.
And to tap into our feelings.
Yeah. I think that is the key. I think sometimes people think that they're going to start thinking about their thoughts, right? Which can be a little that game. But the game of life what you've always taught is that the game of life is actually about joy. Like we are here to experience joy and abundance and good. Like we didn't come to experience all the lack and the destruction and all of that.
And isn't it interesting how people will argue for their limitations by saying, oh, but look what's happening in the world.
Right.
Oh, but look what's happening in our world and all of the terrible things that are going on in our world. How can you say we're meant to be here in joy when so many people are hurt and whatever? And it's a fascinating time to be alive right now. And we've all chosen to be here during this time of the planet's ascension. And this ascension process, and this has happened scientifically in planets forever, but the ascension process has been going on for decades. And the harmonic convergence back in the 80s, and the shift in 2012, and the shift again in the energy on the planet in 2016. So it used to be that the dominant emotional vibration on the planet was fear. It used to be.
Okay.
And now, so more than 50% of the people on the planet lived in fear. And that's pretty obvious when we look around the planet. And now that's shifted back in 2012 and has been shifting, that there is more than 50% of the people today that are living above the line.
In love.
They're living in a higher vibration. Love.
Wow.
Instead of fear. And when that shift happened, then, the Armageddon and all of that was predicted, it shifted the energy on the planet. The planet is a living entity.
Right.
Okay. And planets come and go.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
And it's based on the choices and where the people on the planet live. And so they either destroy themselves,
right,
or they lift themselves up into a higher energy.
Right.
So we have been living in more of a dominant fear, and now we're living more of a dominant love. So as this ascension of the planet continues, everything, unlike love, comes up for transmutation.
Right.
Everything, unlike love. That's what we're experiencing. This virus that's been with us for 2 years was predicted years and years ago, decades ago.
Yes.
It was predicted very much exactly the way it's shown up.
Yes.
The divisiveness that has happened, the political divisiveness, all of the shootings and all of those things, all of that is the energy that is coming up that's unlike love to be healed.
Right.
And we're part of that.
Yeah.
So if we're upset and angry about what's happening in the world today, then we're part of the collective problem. If we make a choice, and it's just a choice, if we make a choice to look at what's happening in the world and recognize it, it's happening. So we're not sticking our head in the sand, it's happening. But we choose to stay in a consciousness of it's all working itself out exactly the way it's meant to. We stay in that higher consciousness that said, I'm praying for the highest and best for all concerned. I'm seeing this unfolding in its right and perfect way. And we go into the global meditations that people are putting online all the time. But we do that. We live there. We live there and we see, yes, this is happening. And I know it's happening for a purpose. Everything is on purpose. And we are rising into love more and more every day. Now we're part of the solution. So collectively, we can look at ourselves and say, am I part of the solution or am I part of the problem?
Right.
And am I angry? Am I talking about how terrible things are to everybody I know? I'm part of the problem.
Right.
Am I stepping up higher and recognizing, yes, that's happening, but it's all happening on purpose. And we're moving into a higher consciousness. and a higher vibration on this planet, and I'm part of the solution, and I see things from a different perspective. So we're always going up higher.
Right.
I'm looking at this experience from a higher perspective, from an expanded perspective. And that shifts my perception. And now I see it differently.
Right.
And sometimes when we're looking at the news or whatever, and we say, how could I see this differently? How could I see this piece of news differently?
Right.
Well, I can step up higher.
Right.
Not get caught up in the drama.
Yeah.
So everything, unlike love, is coming up for healing, and we see it all around us.
Right. And I see it in my clients, like everything that is, like anxiety might have been a little bit of a problem, and now it's a big problem for them, or anger, or autoimmune disease, all kinds of stuff is coming up, but it's coming up for healing. It's coming up so that, and my job, my daytime job is to help people clear so they can see, so they can return to the oneness that we all are. And I think there's an urgency around, I feel an urgency to help as many people as possible see, to help them clear the crap so that they can have a different perspective, not my perspective, their perspective, like what makes sense for them. It doesn't have to be my way, but they've got to clear it so that they can be in the vibration of love more.
Well, I love how you're framing it now, nourishing the soul, because that covers all bases.
Right.
Nourishing the soul covers all bases: body, mind, soul. Body, mind, soul.
Yeah.
So I love what you're doing, and I love your expertise. I've listened to some of your YouTubes on the body and what that means and what we're ingesting and how you bring it all together as a unit.
Right.
Body, mind, soul.
Right.
And so when we nourish our body, we're nourishing our soul.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. And I think we're aligning. It's for me, it feels more like an alignment. When my body feels better, I can feel more in alignment. It just feels there's an ease and a flow. And I think there are people that can get there without their body being at ease. I mean, I know people that have had chronic pain and they're still very much, they vibrate very high in the love space above the line. But for some of us, we get really, it drags us down when our body is hurting and not working very well.
Well, that's why we can't escape or eliminate any of those three.
Right.
Okay, we can't eliminate them, but we can look at our life and say, well, where is my life most disconnected?
Right.
What's the biggest issues I have in my life? Sometimes they're physical, sometimes they're mental.
Right.
Sometimes I really don't believe I'm anything but this physical body and nothing else exists.
Right.
And so that's another understanding. And nothing is right or wrong. It's just, I say it's not right or wrong. It's not good or bad. It is what it is.
Right. Right.
So when you come into, it is what it is. So maybe I'm living with chronic pain. If somebody's living with chronic pain and they've come to accept it, I'm accepting this chronic pain.
Yeah.
And so that's not a piece that they really even care about changing.
Right. That's,
and so, and
right.
Others of us would say, well, why wouldn't you want to overcome that?
Right.
Well, because I've learned to live with that now.
Right.
It's like, okay, well, but then I really have these relationship problems and I want to work on them. So, but isn't it, and I know you find this true, is that when you work on one level,
oh yeah,
all the levels,
of it shifts. Yeah.
All of it shifts.
Yeah.
So if you're working on your physical body, your mind and your soul are going to shift.
Yes.
So it doesn't really matter where you tap in and what area that you're going to tap in that seems to be most prominent or important to you at the time, whether you want to work on your soul connection or you want to work on your mind, it's all going to support the whole triune nature of human.
Right. Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, which is what's so exciting. Because it doesn't matter where you start, you just start where you can start.
You just start. Yeah, that is so amazing. It makes life exciting and adventuresome and joyous and abundant. and you end up with abundance on every level because everything has shifted, and it's a process.
Yes.
So there's no quantum leaps in this. I've discovered over the years, I've been on this for many, many decades. So yes, I've attained that level of joy in my life, but life still happens around me.
Right.
You know,
right.
People get sick, people die, you know, that happens.
Right.
And so the process never ends. I am the proverbial student. I have been in this study for 50 years, and I'm as excited about learning new ways of being and new ways of understanding myself as a powerful spiritual creative being as I was years ago.
Yes.
I find that so, because you never get it done. You know, as Abraham likes to say, you never get it done.
Right.
You're always going to be in the process.
Exactly.
You know, and when you're complete here, then you drop the physical body. But if you're still in a human body, then you still have learning to do.
You're not done. Right.
You're not done. There's still growing to do. There's still adventures to have here. We came here because we want to be here. This is the dimension where we create physicality. We don't do that in the non-physical dimensions. This is the dimension that we do that in. So we come here for the joy of it, for the experience of it, and for whatever that growing edge may be for us and any particular life experience.
Right.
And we'll always have a growing edge, no matter how long we're here, no matter how old we get, no matter how enlightened you think you are, there's always a growing edge.
Always.
That's what makes it fun.
It does. It makes it, that makes it more adventurous. And when you were just saying, you've watched some of my YouTube videos and about the gut health and all of that. My prayer is to stay teachable, to not, to always stay curious and teachable here, whether it's with the soul, the body, with the mind, just to always. And I tell so many people that there's nowhere to get. Like and some people find that very freeing, and some people find that a little discouraging, but there's nowhere to get. We're just here to experience.
And we're teachable. We're never going to get it all done. And we're just here as teachable beings of the light.
Yeah.
Yes.
Just teachable beings of the light. That's it. Yeah. That seems like a good place to call this, to wind it up here. But I'm so excited that we got this chance to talk. I always love talking to you, whether it's in, standing in my kitchen, talking about choices and why would we have chosen to come at this time? And, why would I have chosen this experience? Why am I choosing it now? So it's always fun to talk to you. And I'm just hoping that people who might be listening, that they find some hope, inspiration. There have been a couple of very practical things that you also talked about with intention and choice and gratitude and visualizing. So I'm hoping that that's going to be helpful for people.
Well, the more that people like yourself and myself put out the message, the more and more people, we live in a world of virtual reality now.
Yeah.
So everything is virtual. Yeah. And many of the gifts that have come out of COVID have brought us into this virtual experience.
Yes.
So there isn't anything that anybody can't learn if they want to. And you just tap in and tune in and plug it into your computer or your phone. And suddenly you've got all of that wisdom and all of that information. And there are just thousands of people like you and I that are teachers, and we're teachers. I learn more from my clients than I teach, and you probably experience that too.
Yeah,
because that's the fun of having clients, is that they're also different, and we learn so much from them. But there are so many of us out here that are teaching different levels of multidimensional living and how to live in the world. And so if there's anything that anybody wants to learn, it's available. And that's the greatness of our world today. Yeah. Everything is available to us, the age of information.
Yeah.
Well, I appreciate you, and I appreciate our time together. This has been fun.
Me too. Yes. It's been wonderful.